The town of Ravenwood had always been surrounded by a dense forest that stretched for miles, its vegetation so thick that even in daylight, the interior remained shadowy. The inhabitants avoided entering the forest after sunset. They told stories of mysterious disappearances and inexplicable sounds coming from the heart of the woods. However, the truth about what lurked inside was more terrible than any local legend. In the fall of 1995, a group of 5 friends decided to challenge the stories and explore the forest. Among them were Lucas, a fearless and curious young man, Julia, a girl passionate about mysteries, Felipe, a staunch skeptic, Mariana, always in search of adventures, and Carlos, who hesitated until the last moment but eventually gave in to the pressure of his friends. They set out at dusk, carrying flashlights, backpacks with supplies, and a tent. As they advanced along the trail, the vegetation became increasingly dense, and the oppressive silence was broken only by the occasional rustling of leaves. As night fell, they set up camp in a small clearing. Felipe, with his usual skepticism, provoked the others, saying there was nothing to fear but wild animals. It was then that they heard it for the first time, a low, indistinct whisper that seemed to come from all directions. "Did you hear that?" Mariana asked, her voice trembling. Lucas nodded, looking around with the flashlight. "It must be the wind," said Felipe, but his eyes showed a hint of doubt. During the night, the whisper became more frequent. It was as if the forest were alive, murmuring ancient and dark secrets. Julia tried to record the sounds with her tape recorder, but when she played it back, she realized the whispers were not in any known language. They were words that seemed to tear at the soul, filling their hearts with an irrational fear. Around midnight, Carlos disappeared. He had gone out of the tent to use the bathroom and never returned. The group, in a panic, searched for him, shouting his name. But the only response they received were the increasingly loud and insistent whispers. The forest, previously oppressive, now felt suffocating, as if the trees were closing in around them. Mariana was the next to disappear. A sharp scream, followed by deadly silence. Lucas, Julia, and Felipe ran towards the sound, but all they found was Mariana's blood-stained scarf. Panic set in, and they decided to return to town, but realized they were completely disoriented. The darkness seemed to envelop everything, and the light from their flashlights barely pierced the gloom. The whispers were now almost deafening, forming words that seemed to echo directly in their minds. "You shouldn't be here. They will come for you. The sacrifice is necessary." Felipe, overcome with terror, ran aimlessly, disappearing into the darkness. Lucas and Julia stayed together, trying to stay calm and find a way back. Suddenly, a tall, shadowy figure emerged from among the trees. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and its presence was accompanied by a nauseating smell of decay. The figure advanced slowly, and Lucas, in a desperate act, attacked with a survival knife. The blade passed through the figure as if it were made of mist, and the monster let out a supernatural scream that made their ears bleed. Julia fell to her knees, her strength abandoning her body, while Lucas tried to drag her away. However, the figure caught up with them, and everything became a blur of pain and darkness. Julia saw glimpses of faces twisted in agony, spectral hands trying to grab them, and the last thing she heard before losing consciousness was the malevolent whisper, "You will be ours forever." Lucas woke up alone in the clearing at dawn, covered in blood that wasn't his. The bodies of his friends were scattered around, their faces frozen in eternal horror. The shadowy figure had disappeared, but the whispers still echoed in his mind, promising they would never leave him. He ran back to Ravenwood, but no one believed his story. He was committed to a psychiatric hospital, where he spent his days muttering about the darkness and the whispers. The inhabitants of Ravenwood continued to avoid the forest at night, and the stories of disappearances increased, but no one dared to investigate. And the whispers in the darkness continued, always waiting, always hungry. Lucas spent years committed to the psychiatric hospital, his nightly screams and constant mutterings becoming routine for the staff. The doctors, without concrete answers, medicated him heavily, hoping to calm his disturbed mind. However, the whispers never left him. In the dead of night, they called to him, hissing promises of pain and terrifying revelations. In Ravenwood, the forest continued to claim its victims. A hunter disappeared, followed by a young woman who often walked her dog on the trails. Fear spread like a virus, and the town was on the brink of despair. Yet one person was determined to uncover the truth. Sarah, an investigative journalist, had heard the stories since childhood. Her brother Felipe's disappearance had never let her rest. Determined to find answers, she prepared to enter the forest. She armed herself with high-powered flashlights, a camera, provisions, and a state-of-the-art voice recorder. Before setting out, she obtained permission to visit Lucas in the hospital. Lucas was pale and emaciated, his sunken eyes reflecting a devastated soul. When Sarah mentioned the forest, he grabbed her hand with surprising strength. "Don't go! They won't let you out," he whispered, his eyes wide with fear. Sarah tried to calm him, promising to be careful. Lucas, in a moment of clarity, handed her a small notebook, its pages filled with disturbing notes and drawings. "This might help you. Notes about what we heard, what we saw. But be careful, they are always listening." With Lucas's notebook in hand, Sarah entered the forest at dusk. The vegetation seemed alive, writhing around her, as if the trees were whispering ancient secrets. She turned on the recorder and began documenting her journey, describing every detail as the night deepened. The whispers started as a low hum, almost inaudible, but soon they became clearer, forming indistinct words that Sarah recognized from Lucas's notes. Sacrifice, blood, darkness. She stopped, fear beginning to take hold. But her determination to find her brother was stronger. Following an almost imperceptible trail, she arrived at a familiar clearing. In the center stood an ancient tree, its roots twisted like claws. The air around it was colder, and the whispers more intense. Sarah opened Lucas's notebook, searching for any clues about the tree. Suddenly, the recorder began to hiss, and a whispered voice emerged, clear and distinct. "Welcome, Sarah. You came seeking answers." Sarah's blood ran cold, but she kept her composure, responding to the void. "Who are you? What happened to my brother?" The voice laughed, a chilling, joyless sound. "They are with us now, as you soon will be. The sacrifice must be completed." The shadowy figure from before emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing with the same malevolent light. Sarah backed away, but the voice continued, relentless. "You humans are so predictable, always seeking answers, but never prepared for the truths you find." Sarah tried to run, but her legs felt rooted to the ground. The figure advanced slowly, and the whispers around her became deafening. In a last effort, she raised the camera, snapping a photo with the maximum flash. The figure screamed, recoiling momentarily, and Sarah seized the chance to run back down the trail. But the forest seemed alive, the trees closing in around her, roots moving to block her path. Desperate, she remembered Lucas's words and opened the notebook, reading aloud a passage about ancient rituals. The whispers softened, as if listening. The figure stopped, watching her with eyes burning with hatred. "You think you can stop us with words?" the voice mocked. But Sarah continued, her voice firm, invoking ancient protection spells. The forest seemed to shudder, the shadows slowly retreating. However, before she could finish, a spectral hand grabbed her arm, pulling her into the darkness. Sarah fought, but the force was overwhelming. The world around her began to fade, plunging her into an endless abyss. Her screams were swallowed by the whispers, and the last thing she saw was the malevolent gleam in the shadowy figure's eyes. The next morning, the forest was quiet, as if nothing had happened. The residents of Ravenwood went about their lives, unaware of the new victim the forest had claimed. But the whispers continued, always lurking, waiting for the next fool brave enough to enter their domain. And so, Ravenwood's darkness remained, fed by fear and sacrifices, its secrets buried in the shadows, patiently awaiting the moment to emerge again. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah's absence began to weigh heavily on Ravenwood. The townsfolk, already terrified of the forest, were now completely paralyzed by fear. But one person couldn't accept her disappearance as just another unsolved mystery. Anna, Sarah's best friend and fellow journalist. Anna had promised Sarah that if anything happened, she would continue the investigation. With Lucas's notebook and Sarah's notes in hand, Anna decided to face the darkness one last time to uncover the truth and, if possible, save her friend. She set out at dusk, armed with more equipment and a fierce determination. At the entrance to the forest, she met old Horace, an elder who had lived in the town forever and knew all the legends and secrets. He approached her with a look of deep sadness and concern. "Don't go, girl. That forest doesn't forgive, and those who dare challenge it never return the same. I've seen many disappear, and the shadows only grow stronger with each sacrifice." Anna, however, was resolute. "I need to save Sarah and understand what's happening. If I don't try, I'll never know what really happened." Horace sighed and handed her a small silver amulet. This amulet was blessed by ancient shamans. It might offer some protection. Use it wisely. Grateful, Anna entered the forest, the amulet firmly around her neck. As she advanced, she felt the weight of the darkness around her. The whispers began, a distant hum, but she pressed on, following Lucas's and Sarah's notes. She reached the same clearing with the twisted tree. The air around it was icy, and the whispers became deafening. Anna opened Sarah's notebook, searching for the passage about ancient rituals. She began to recite the words, feeling a dark presence approaching. "You don't belong here," the voice whispered, cold and full of malice. Anna ignored it, continuing the recitation, feeling the amulet warm against her skin. The shadowy figure appeared again, but this time, something was different. The amulet emitted a soft light, which seemed to repel the creature. "You cannot stop us," the figure screamed, advancing. But Anna, with an inner strength she never knew she had, raised the amulet and pressed it against the ancient tree. The light grew, and the whispers turned into screams of agony. The tree began to crack, an intense light emerging from within it. Anna stepped back, watching in shock as the shadowy figure writhed and disappeared. The screams subsided, and a profound silence took over the forest. Suddenly, the clearing was illuminated by a golden light, and spectral figures began to emerge from the shadows, their faces familiar. Among them, Anna recognized Sarah, Lucas, and even Felipe and Lucas's other friends. They were free, but their expressions were sad and resigned. "Sarah," Anna shouted, running to her friend. "What happened?" Sarah smiled, though her eyes were filled with tears. "We were trapped, our spirits used as part of the dark ritual. But you freed us. Now we can rest in peace." Lucas appeared beside Sarah, holding her hand. "You were brave, Anna, braver than any of us. Thank you for freeing us." With a final smile, the figures began to fade, dissolving into the light. Anna felt a deep peace fill her heart, knowing she had done the right thing. The golden light faded, and the clearing returned to normal, silent, and peaceful. Anna returned to Ravenwood, carrying the memories and stories of those who had been lost. She wrote a detailed article about the events, revealing the truth about the forest and the sacrifices. The town, though still cautious, began to heal, knowing that the whispers in the darkness had finally been silenced. And so, the darkness in Ravenwood began to dissipate, replaced by a new hope. Anna became a local hero, her courage and determination serving as an example to all. But she never forgot the faces of those she had lost, and she always visited the clearing where it all began, to remember their sacrifice and the strength she found in fighting the darkness.